It can be a huge relief to finally have an answer. Maybe you've spent years wondering why certain things seem harder for you than they do for everyone else. Why you struggle to focus. Why social situations feel exhausting. Why school, work, relationships, or everyday life never seem to come with the instruction manual everyone else received. Then one day you get a diagnosis: ADHD, autism, dyslexia, anxiety, and suddenly things start making sense. For many people, it's validating. It explains years of confusion. It can even bring a sense of peace. But sometimes something else happens. The diagnosis becomes the entire story. Instead of helping us understand ourselves, it starts defining us. Today, we're talking about a strategy that takes a different approach. What if a diagnosis wasn't a destination? What if it was simply a compass? Welcome to ADHD Different Strategies. I'm Julie Legg, your host, author of The Missing Piece, and an ADHD advocate. Over the years, I've had the privilege of speaking with incredible guests, unpacking real-life strategies, mindsets, and tools for navigating ADHD. This Bitesized series brings those insights together: short, practical, and ready to use. Today's strategy comes from my conversation with ADHD coach Carol Siege. Carol is also the mother of 4 neurodivergent sons, and she has spent years helping people better understand both themselves and their children. Carol's perspective encourages self-understanding without becoming trapped by a diagnosis. Let's hear Carol explain it in her own words.
What's important is understanding oneself, but also not getting too hung up on that label. What is the lived experience, and what do we each need to understand about ourselves and how we make our way through the world? It's not uncommon for there to be comorbidity, meaning if you have one diagnosis, you are also likely to have at least one other diagnosis. Where those lines are, I firmly believe is less important than what it means and what you have, what skills you need to learn, and where your strengths are as well.
A diagnosis can be life-changing. It can explain patterns you've struggled with for years and help you access support, accommodations, and tools that genuinely make life easier. But Carol reminds us that understanding yourself is important without becoming overly attached to the label itself. The diagnosis is information. It's not an identity. Think of it like a compass. A compass helps you understand where you are and which direction to travel next. It doesn't tell you where you can and can't go. The real value of a diagnosis isn't the label. It's what the label teaches you about how your brain works. This strategy is especially useful when you've recently received a diagnosis and feel overwhelmed by what it means. You find yourself defining your abilities by a label. You're focusing only on challenges and forgetting strengths. You're supporting a neurodivergent child and wondering what comes next. You've started saying things like, "I can't because I have ADHD," or "that's just how I am." You want understanding without limitation. The goal is awareness, not restriction. When it comes to practicing this strategy, use the diagnosis as information. Instead of asking, "What does this label mean?" ask yourself, "What does this tell me about how my brain works?" Look for patterns, challenges, and needs that become easier to understand through that lens. Focus on supports. A diagnosis is most useful when it leads to practical action. Maybe that's coaching. Maybe it's medication. Maybe it's sensory supports. visual reminders, flexible work arrangements, or learning new skills. Don't stop at the diagnosis. Ask what will actually help. Look for strengths too. Many diagnoses focus heavily on deficits. Balance the picture. What strengths come with your brain wiring? Creativity, curiosity, pattern recognition, problem solving, persistence. The full picture matters. Allow growth. A diagnosis explains your starting point. It doesn't predict your future. Skills can be learned. Systems can be developed. Support can make a difference. Acceptance and growth can exist side by side. Update your story. Many of us build identities around old experiences. Maybe school convinced you that you weren't smart. Maybe work convinced you that you were lazy. A diagnosis can help rewrite those stories. Don't let a belief formed at 14 decide what's possible at 44. Research shows that people who embrace and understand their neurodivergence often report better well-being and quality of life than those who spend their energy masking or suppressing their differences. Studies also suggest that recognizing strengths associated with ADHD and autism is linked to better self-esteem, greater resilience, and improved emotional well-being. The diagnosis itself isn't what creates positive outcomes. It's how that diagnosis becomes integrated into a person's identity. A flexible identity creates room for self-compassion, learning, and growth. A rigid identity can become limiting. In other words, understanding helps. Being defined by the label doesn't. One of the things I love most about this strategy is that it reminds us we're more than just a diagnosis. A label can provide clarity, it can explain challenges, it can help us find support, but it doesn't determine our potential. The diagnosis is not the destination. It's the map reference, the compass, a useful piece of information. Learn from it, use it, but don't live inside it. A big thanks again to Carol Siege for sharing this perspective and for being part of the broader ADHD difference conversation. If you'd like to hear more from that episode, head over to our main series and listen to Season 2, Episode 18. Thanks for tuning in. For more practical tools for beautifully different brains, hit the subscribe button.